Well, hello, everyone. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to our Meet the Gies Faculty series, where we're introducing you to the influential professors at the Gies College of Business and the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. Today, we have a major player at the school, the Chief Learning Innovation Officer, who had been the Associate Dean of Graduate Programs, who had been and still is a Professor of Accountancy, and had been the academic director for the accounting degrees, both graduate and undergraduate. Her name is Nerissa Brown. Nerissa, welcome.
Thank you, John. Really pleased to be here and to have this awesome conversation.
Absolutely. Tell me what first attracted you to academia, because you've got an interesting resume, including even a little stint at the SEC in Washington.
Yeah, I would say my path to academia wasn't one that had a straight line. As you talk to many academics, they'll tell you that most of us happen to find this profession somewhat by accident. Because it's not like in high school, I said, you know what, I wanted to be an academic, or many of us, if we decided that we wanted to be a teacher, we had no clue what research was like, which is a big part of what we do as tenure track professors or tenured professors. My journey into academia started by, I'm originally from Jamaica, and I did my bachelor's and master's degrees in accounting. And just like many young people, I took a role as a financial management analyst in a large conglomerate within the Jamaica food distribution area called Grace Kennedy. I really enjoyed the role, but about, let's say, a year and a half in, I really started to miss the process of learning. Felt some of the tasks that I was doing was just a little bit too repetitive, and then I started questioning, okay, can I do this for 20 years? And started to question, okay, where do I see myself, move into with respect to the different roles? Like, do I want to be a CFO? Do I want to be a controller? And with those questions, I actually turned back to my university professors, and many of them had their PhDs from American universities. And so I wanted to find out more about their journey, what brought them to the classroom, what was it like actually doing a PhD. The notion of doing a PhD in accounting was actually mind-blowing, because many of us didn't even know you could study accounting even beyond doing, journal entries and debits and credits. But really what stood out to me when I met with my university professors was the fact that they talked about the flexibility with respect to their careers, and the fact that they get to ask pretty cool questions and actually get to do research to answer those questions. And so they felt like any given time period, they were never doing the same thing. That repetitive nature of academia, for them just wasn't there. And I think another thing that interested me is that in their roles as professors, they got to do many things. Some of my professors sat on corporate boards. Some of them served as consultants. Some of them were in government-related roles. And they were also teachers and did research. And so I felt like, oh, well, this is a career path where I can get to do a little bit of everything and actually have impact on business, to say, oh, well, maybe someday I can be on a board of directors. And so with that, I said, this is something that I may want to pursue. Still had no clue what it was like to do a PhD, but I followed their advice and applied to several schools here in the US, got into the University of Maryland, and decided to pack my bags and come here and follow the PhD journey. But the last thing I'll also say is in my master's program, and this is where I felt like I would still continue with accounting as a discipline. Um, in my PhD journey, I did a master's class on financial reporting theory. So really talking about the conceptual framework, the process, the political process, you would say, of standard setting and all of the negotiations between the different stakeholders. And I found that to be fascinating because when we're taught accounting, we're just taught the rules and you think the rules are pretty much black and white. And in that
Mm-mm.
course, I got to see that there are many gray areas in the rules, and some of the rules, the way how they are written, is because of this political process and the notion that you have to set rules to meet many different stakeholders. And so
True.
that kind of resonated with me, and you would say my research kind of reflects that, and it also led me to have interest in spending a year at the SEC to really understand what rulemaking was like with respect to accounting and financial disclosures. And it was really an awesome experience to kind of be a fly on the wall, actually hearing the conversations behind the scenes of actually setting rules and standards.
Yeah, when you look at your publication record, it shows a fair amount of diversity from misinformation reporting to investors' response to non-GAAP metrics to the role of behavioral biases to managers' strategic disclosure and what they actually will disclose publicly. But is there
Mhm.
one thing that you're most interested in?
I would say the core of my research still boils down to that disclosure element.
Uh,
What are firms communicating to the markets, whether it's through the typical financial statements, the 10Ks, the 10Qs? What are they reporting in press releases? And this is where I look very deeply in many of my papers on non-GAAP earnings, how they are communicating with respect to earnings forecasts. But a lot of my research also looks at the strategy behind managers' communications with the market. And that's something that I ended up really, again, finding fascinating. The fact that our rules and standards with respect to your typical financial reporting disclosures that you find in the 10K allows managers discretion around what they provide to the market made me really want to look at, okay, well, what are some of managers' incentives to, potentially weave a different story with respect to their communications or to paint a rosier picture. And that's what non-GAAP earnings do. They tend to paint a rosier picture about a firm's performance. Um, but underneath that all, I really started to have interest in my PhD program about really understanding the behavioral practices or the behavioral aspects of you know, financial reporting as a system that relies on us as humans. Like, whenever you're putting together communications at the end of it all, there's managers involved, there's analysts and there's investors. And I actually wanted to do more psychological training, you would say, with respect to my research. The University of Maryland, their accounting department didn't have that track, but I actually found a way to incorporate behavioral theories in my research by really looking a lot at the behavioral finance literature and seeing how specific cognitive biases that we have as humans can manifest in how firms communicate with the market, and also how those biases also manifest within investors and within markets, and how those biases can then drive how firms communicate. So, for example, I have a study that looks at investor sentiment in the marketplace. So, when investors are overly optimistic or overly pessimistic, how do managers actually change the strategy around their disclosures? I use non-GAAP earnings there as the setting. But again, just looking at how market moods impact how managers communicate again with the markets. And so there's that common theme throughout my research,
Right.
even though I tend to look at many different things, that there's that common theme about doing archival research, so research that uses data, but incorporating behavioral theory. And when I started out as a brand new researcher, I was one of the very few people actually doing behavioral archival research in accounting. It was somewhat avant-garde, a little bit
Mm,
hard to publish because it was so new, but I finally cracked in with getting some of my papers published that now it's actually fairly common to incorporate
interesting.
behavioral theory into archival
What would you say is
research.
the most significant finding out of all the research that you've done?
Um, Maybe just thinking about some of the papers that I would say are heavily cited. That investor sentiment paper is very heavily cited. Again, looking at how market moods, social moods can impact managers' disclosures. Another paper that I've written that is related to more on the behavioral finance side that has gotten a lot of attention. It got featured in the Wall Street Journal, was looking at how mobile devices can actually enhance the flow of information in capital markets. And when that
Mm,
study was done, there wasn't a lot of evidence on how individuals, particularly individual investors, were actually using mobile devices to learn about firms or to actually make trades. And the neat thing about that study is we had to find a setting where we could actually observe um, changes in the usage of mobile devices and then try to tie that change to changes in trading activity. And the mechanism that we actually use to actually make that link was looking at distractive driving laws and how distractive
really?
driving laws
That's
um,
novel.
yeah, pretty novel. When those laws were enacted in a particular state,
Yeah.
and when you're actually banned from using your phones while we're driving, we actually saw that for those states in those short windows of time, you actually see a drop in stock trading activity for the stocks that were based
Wow.
in that state. Um, I know when that paper was written, a lot of people actually didn't believe it, but the tests are so tight that eventually people are like, something must be going on here. And others have taken that result and have done other studies on how mobile communication is actually a positive thing for our capital markets using other settings, such as the implementation of 3G networks and how the rollout of that across the US has impacted stock price efficiency, trading activity, et cetera.
Wow. I love that. That's really creative. Now, what do you like
Yes.
most about teaching students at Gies?
Well, what I really like about teaching the students here at Geese is the fact that they're super sharp. You can talk to them about things that is going on in the marketplace. You can talk about your research with them, and they actually like really find that fascinating. It's because they're looking for that deeper meaning of what they're learning about in the classroom and the practical application, not just learning how 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, but actually learning, many times the theory behind that, the concepts behind that. And so I know for me coming here at Geese to teach accounting at, you would say, the number one
Mhm.
institution, the
Yes.
number one ranked institution with respect to accounting, I really, what really resonated with me was how sharp the students are. But the other thing just kind of goes back to Geese's mission with respect to purpose. Students in the classroom wanting to understand a lot more about the purpose of what we're teaching. And so when I taught my graduate accounting class on financial reporting theory, I started out the class talking about, well, what is the purpose of accounting? Why does this function exist in our capital markets? And I tied it back to the fact that being able to participate in capital markets is, you would say, a social good. To be able to invest in companies and generate a return from that is something that increases, for all of us, our economic welfare. However, we need accountants and auditors to actually make sure that firms are really communicating how the firm is performing in a way that is fairly truthful and fairly verifiable. And so I talked to them about how our role as accountants is to actually protect that social good, to make sure that we can all participate in the capital markets without being afraid that we're going to get hosed or,
Right.
the,
Yeah, there is this higher purpose to the job.
right, right. But you could see the light bulbs kind of go off in their minds when
Uh-huh.
I brought it back to that and said, hey, you guys are, you have your little superpowers, which is
Right.
when you know accounting, when you know how to distill financial statements, it's a superpower that cannot be taken away from you. But them actually just wanting to know a lot more with respect to the purpose behind what we're teaching them is also good. Another thing that I love about teaching here is I teach in our online Masters of Accounting program. And so I get the opportunity to not only teach undergrads here, but also to teach working professionals, many of them
Mhm.
learning accounting for the very first time. But the wealth of knowledge and experience that they bring to the classroom teaches me something every single day I walk into my online class. It's actually a discussion where I'm learning from my students because they're there on the front lines. Some of them are working in the accounting field, some of them are working in the finance field. And when we're discussing topics, I'll throw it back to them and say, hey, what are you seeing in your own companies? Or if you're trading stocks, I teach a financial statement analysis class. How would you analyze this? And so it really turns the tables where I feel like here and anywhere I've taught at, I've always felt that every day I feel like I'm either helping somebody to learn or I'm learning myself from the students in my classroom.
Yeah, so it's a two-way
It's a
thing.
two-way. Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
So Nerissa, if you weren't a business school professor, what do you think you would be?
Wow, that's a tricky question. Now, in high school, I really loved geography and geology. For some reason, that was a subject that just really floated my boat, just understanding the different land formations that we saw, how rivers were formed. I really loved plate tectonics and learning about earthquakes and volcanoes. And I really thought when I went into my undergrad program that I would have opted into geography or geology. But my mom convinced me to do accounting as a safe a safe discipline. But the fun story is when I was actually thinking about doing a PhD, I actually looked into what it would mean to do a PhD in geography or
Oh,
geology,
wow.
and um, what was the career options of individuals that did PhDs in those disciplines, and many of them ended up working for oil companies and stuff like that, and I was like, I think I
Mm,
would prefer an academic setting, a university setting, which I've really loved. For some reason, I really like being on university campuses. That whole notion of, walking through the hallowed halls of education. It's somewhere that I see myself and I can't think
right.
of doing anything else. So I think I've landed in the right spot through a roundabout way.
And your role has greatly evolved, particularly since 2022 when you were named Associate Dean of Graduate Programs and now as a Chief Learning Innovation Officer. I think those jobs have put you in a place where you can imagine what the business school of the future will look like. And from
Mhm.
that perspective, what's your vision for the future of business education?
I would say the future of business education, and this is something that we're really looking closely at here in Geese, is really making sure that business education can be as flexible as possible. It's something that I'm talking to my team and something that we've been working on over the last 2 years since I took over the role, is making sure that as we have graduate credentials and business school credentials broadly, undergrad or grad, that there is the flexibility to join a program regardless of its modality. And so some business schools have done this. We have yet to do this here in Geese. We've done it in some respects, but can you start a program on campus and finish it up fully online and vice versa? Um, how can you earn credentials that might only be available online, but you're in an on-campus program? So for our students, if you're in an on-campus program, can you still, like for us, earn one of our online graduate certificates? And so it's making your portfolio of degrees and credentials broadly flexible and integrated. Business schools have grown in a way where we think about degree credentials in very siloed ways. And this is a curriculum or program of study for X degree, Y degree. Um, and at Geese, because we have stackability, it has allowed us to think about how each degree relates to each other and how degrees and credentials can be broken in pieces. But the next frontier for us is really just kind of making sure that those pieces are fully integrated and students can, if they choose to, move from one to the other, especially with modality. Right now, we're actually trying to figure out how we can have students in a fully online program still be able to take classes on campus. And we're seeing this with some students who um, are ROTC students and need to
Oh,
take an on-campus ROTC class to still be eligible for their military service and benefits. But our
wow.
system here at the university doesn't allow that because the fee structure is different between online programs and on-campus programs. And so for those students, we are telling them they can't do it. And so how can we clear those barriers that you can be in a fully online program and still take that ROTC class and still be on your way? So it's getting beyond the systems that we have in place.
And that's a great door opener because you have an immediate need with your OTC students. And
Mhm.
once you prove the concept and get beyond the rules that exist, you can offer it to everybody,
Right,
which is a
right.
beautiful thing, really, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, Nerissa, I am sure that you will be bringing the second revolution to Geese in higher education. I have no doubt about it. Your dean and boss has promised that to the marketplace, and I think you're the right person to help deliver it. So, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, John. It's been an awesome pleasure just talking about my research and my journey in this role in administration. Sometimes I don't have as much time as I would love to do research, and so it's just always fun just thinking back of, oh yeah, these are
Yeah,
some of
this
the
is why I
papers that
did
I've
that.
done. Yeah, this is why I did this study, and
And
this
it's
is why
not
I
really
really
because
thought,
my mother told me.
yes, yeah, yes.
All right, thank you. A real pleasure. All right,
All right.
everyone. We've been speaking to Nerissa Brown, the Chief Learning Innovation Officer at the Gies College of Business at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Hope you enjoyed our conversation and got a taste of what it would be like to go to the school and study accounting at its incredible accounting program. This is one in a series of Meet the Gies Faculty. Check out for our other little profiles of different faculty at the school. Otherwise, thanks for watching.